Hi class, so my name is Veronica Nelson, and today I'd like to share something that I know on a very deep and personal level, and that is how raising 7 children has taught me so much about communication. So, over 2 decades of parenting, and I'm still trying to figure it out, but I've grown alongside 7 very beautiful but very different human beings. And through trial and error, through a whole lot of tears and a whole lot of love, I've learned that communication isn't just about getting kids to listen, it's more about truly connecting with them. So, some of those tools that have helped me along the way are some things that I'll talk about today. The first one I want to talk about is this book called Raising Boys. And when I first became a parent, I had 3 boys to start with. And so I knew that I knew a lot about raising girls. I'm a girl. I know kind of what girls need, and I thought I had that part all figured out. But boys, on the other hand, were a whole different ball game for me. So I wanted to be best prepared and know what I was doing. So I bought this book, and I'm glad I did because it really resonated with me in a lot of ways. And the first thing that it taught me was the 777 rule, which is when babies and boys especially are 0 to 7 years old, they need to be more kind of with mom. They need that nurturing, that love, that comfort that they get from mom. However, when they turn 7 to the age of about 14, those next 7 years, they really want to emulate kind of what dad does, and they look to dad, so they need that more male figure in their life. And then when they turn 14 and they're going into adulthood, they kind of need guidance from both. So they are going to take your decisions and your guidance in a different way. They're now growing into their own. So that really resonated with me, as well as the differences between boys and girls as far as like testosterone and just that whole different field of kids that the little rambunctious boys are as opposed to some little girls. What works for one child isn't necessarily what's going to work for the next, though. So I even saw differences in just the boys individually, even though the book. But that has been proven time and time again. And some of the differences are, say, my daughter Amina, for instance. She was just our dream child. She was the academic scholar. She was athletic. She was very respectful, very driven, never got into trouble. I could just explain something one time and she would really take it to heart. My youngest daughter, Anohea, however, she's the complete polar opposite and by far the most defiant of the kids. She's very strong willed, she's spirited, and we're still learning with her. It changes every day, but she's just the sweetest little girl. And part of it could be just her age. She is only 8 years old and she has a lot of older siblings, so that could be some of it, but her personality definitely has a lot to do with it as well. My daughter, Alyssa, who is most like me, she is very nurturing. She's introverted but incredibly strong willed. She's quiet, she's very firm, she's very loyal, very thoughtful. She needs a completely different kind of communication for her. She needs a very soft but clear and emotional response with her, and that works well for her. And we have Nicholas, who is the oldest, and he just lights up every room that he walks in. He has this magnetic energy. He was homecoming king. He really thrives on that fun and affection, but not so much on rules or on structure. Um, Now, what really kind of set it in for me and taught me that kids are going to be completely different is my identical twins, because even though they share the same exact DNA, they are complete opposites at times. I say at times because they actually flip flop in personality, and where for the first part of several years, one twin was the extroverted one, the very social butterfly, and then it switched, and then the introverted one tended to kind of find himself, and then they switched roles, and so they did that a few times. Just when I would start to think that I knew them and I knew what I was doing, they would just turn it on me and we'd start all over again. So all the joys of parenting, constantly evolving. My attempt into actually parenting, because parenting for a very long time didn't feel good to me. I hated being the enforcer. I hated being the one to say no all the time. So I was a part of this class called Love and Logic. That was a very natural consequence way of parenting. What it did is it allowed children to be very independent and make choices, but then live with those consequences. And they were natural consequences, so it wasn't anything that you had to do or say. It was more kind of just what happened, and it really took me out of being that bad guy role. And that philosophy really changed the way that I disciplined and how I guided them and connected them. And we had a much more peaceful relationship. There wasn't a whole lot of, pushback on the natural consequence, because of course it wasn't me who was dishing that out. It was the natural consequence of what they were doing and making choices for. So when they were little, it was things like me wanting them to grab a jacket so that they wouldn't be cold outside. So where I would normally enforce and make them grab a jacket, I could give them the option or the choice to have that jacket or not. And if they didn't want to bring it, then I would just let them know, you may get kind of cold. And if they didn't want to bring it anyway, then that was, okay. It was up to them. When they ended up getting cold later on, it was just a natural consequence of them not bringing it. So it was the teacher of those consequences. The natural consequence was the teacher, not so much me. And this method actually worked really well for my son, Caden, because he's brilliant and insanely talented, but he's just very, very lazy unless it's him and his motivating factor. Instead of forcing him to perform or punishing him because of his lack of effort, the natural consequence really helped him to make those decisions. He, like I said, was very athletic. He loved to play sports. If he wouldn't want to do his homework, it was going to be that natural consequence of those poor grades that didn't allow him to play, not me saying, no, you can't play unless you do this. So when that started to happen, he really owned his outcomes, and that really kind of helped change his thought processes and his choices in that way. And I loved it because it gave me the permission to kind of just step back, still teach them and respect their independence, but allow them to make their own choices and deal with those responsibilities on their own. The next thing that kind of really helped shape my role in parenting and how I do it is this love languages, the 5 love languages. So this kind of talks about the different ways that people show love and feel love. So there's a quiz in the very beginning, and you take a test, and it tells you whether you fall into one of the 5 categories. And they're gifts, physical touch, words of affirmation, quality time, and acts of service. So it helps you love people in the way that they feel love, not necessarily the way that you feel love. So take, for instance, my husband. He is a acts of service personality, and I'm a physical touch. So when he wants to show me love, he'll do things like do the dishes or clean my car out, make dinner, do things like that. And that's him really showing, his family that he loves them. Me, however, me being a physical touch as my primary love language, I'll do things like hug him when he's doing the dishes, or touch his arm, or different things, different massage or something. And that's my way of kind of showing love. Same, with the kids, and they'll scratch their backs or do things like that. But for me, just that closeness and that touch is what helps me show them. So when you understand that about the other person, you're able to show love in those ways. So I know that my husband's acts of service, so I'll make the conscious effort or the intent to do something acts of service, because that's what helps him feel loved. That's how he shows it primarily, and he'll do the same for me. So he'll do things like massages or different things like that, so that I feel loved with that physical closeness that I like. Nicholas, for example, he's one who thrives on the words of affirmation. So for him, it's something like, man, you really crushed it today, or you looked really good on the court today, or different things like that help him feel and have good responses to that. Alyssa tends to respond to more quality time. So it doesn't have to be, a physical thing or words, but just sitting with her in kind of silence, or just being close to her helps her light up. Anohea could be just because of her age, because she is only 8, but she responds really well to physical touch. Maybe that's her, primary love language. She thrives off of, hugs or holding her hand or any kind of, touch. She'll come cuddle in bed with me or lay with me, and that really gets to her, especially when, she has upset feelings or she's struggling with something. Each person and each child will actually have their own way, and that's why I ended up picking up the second book that actually delves into children and their specific love languages. So I went deeper with that because I liked it so much. So in conclusion, I just like to say that raising 7 kids has completely changed me and how I communicate, and their personalities that give me lots of different practice and lots of different ways to kind of see what works and what doesn't work. And again, it doesn't always work the same for all children. So through all their uniquenesses, I've learned that the connection comes from not control or perfectly chosen words or perfect behavior, but more from understanding and consistency and care. So these tools They're not just for parents, they're actually for anybody. They help you communicate, and if you maybe aren't a parent now, but one day you intend to be, then picking up some of these tools will help you at that point, or it'll even help you now if you want to strengthen some of your relationships, maybe with coworkers or friends, or niece or nephew, partner. Um, Everyone needs to feel heard and respected and loved, and communication is the key part of that. So thank you so much for listening, and appreciate you.